So, the 2022-2023 season has been nothing short of unreal. I mean, so many moments that have just come out of left field and caught people completely off guard. And I thought, well, since it's already the halfway point in the season, let's try to go over some of those points so we can get our memory refreshed. Well, if you can dig into your memory bank all the way back to week 1, you would remember that we started the season off with a highly anticipated match between the defending champion Rams and the Bills, whose entire purpose in the league is to serve as the Chiefs' personal fleshlight in the playoffs. But immediately, we learned that the little brother has finally grown up, and the Rams gave a morsel of foreshadowing of their piss-poor O-line and the over-reliance on Cooper Kupp. Then the Sunday slate of games happened, and we all remembered why we loved football. Or Scott Hansen. We got to see A.J. Brown unleashed with the rest of the Eagles unit as they barely survived the onslaught of, the Lions, as well as Justin Jefferson and Michael Thomas willing their teams to wins. And above all, we were blessed with 2 kicker takeover games, as we got to see Baker Mayfield's revenge game with the Panthers vs. Browns, and still to this moment, the game of the year in Bengals vs. Steelers. So we learned pretty quickly that Baker's talents were consumed by the progressive demon, and the Browns got into position for a 60-yard field goal attempt by their rookie kicker on opening day, and they made the kick, breaking their embarrassing 18-year streak without a season opener win. Then we got into the Steelers-Bengals game, and okay, I'm gonna try to do my best. So, back in the before times, Mitchell Trubisky was the starting quarterback of the Steelers and didn't look as bad as Joe Burrow, who was responsible for 5 Bengal turnovers. But the current leader in passing yards willed the Bungles down the field and tossed a game-winning touchdown to Jamar Chase, who could once walk. But instead of the end, this was merely the beginning. Minka Fitzpatrick, some guy with a cool beard who had been terrorizing the Bengals all game long, blocks the extra point, forcing the game into overtime. At this point, you know the drill. The Bengals drive down the field in overtime, and a free chip shot to end the game? Nope. Now the Steelers get a good shot at a field goal. Nope, of course not. Of course. Finally, we got to see some early cracks in the Bengals O-line, and the Steelers escaped the jungle with a win, but suffered some vital wounds in the process. Some other storylines around the league were Mahomes doing Mahomes stuff as usual, the Colts tying with the Texans, and Russell Wilson struggling in a loss to Geno Smith and the Seahawks. Imagine if that storyline kept going. And in week 2, the scriptwriters of the NFL were once again not allowed to see their families, as we started the week off with Ravens vs. Dolphins. What people forget about this game is that Lamar Jackson played almost a perfect game of football, but Tua Tagovailoa tossed 469 yards and 6 touchdowns. To be fair though, we have no evidence that Lamar Jackson used the bathroom prior to this game, so he wasn't at full power. But this was still a statement game from the new Tyreek Hill Waddle Tua Dolphins. But above all other games, we got to see 2 tragic franchises continue to live up to their reputations. First off, the Browns had a strong lead late in the 4th quarter, even having the closest thing to a surefire win with a 99% chance to close out the Jets. However, the one obvious flaw with analytics was once again brought to the surface, as they did not take into account that Joe Flacco exists, and he excavated the Jets from the dead, manipulating events like missed kicks and onside recoveries to allow the Jets to win the game. Then the Raiders one-upped the Browns in a battle of who could piss their fan base off more. Now, as a Raiders fan who was at this game, and one who doesn't feel like having a, complicated night, let's just say late in the 4th quarter, Hunter Renfrow fumbles, but the Raiders recover. Then Carr overthrows a wide-open Devontae Adams, then Renfrow fumbles, again leading to a game-winning touchdown for the Cardinals. Finally, the Eagles and Bills played a doubleheader on Monday, and both separated themselves from the rest of the league with decisive wins respectively. So, you know, a pretty boring week overall. In week 3, though, dare I say, things actually quieted down just a little bit. We got to see the Bills have a meltdown at the end of the first half, as well as the second half, in a loss to the Dolphins. And to be honest, that's pretty much everything in terms of excitement. Seriously, I mean, just look at all these games. Damn near nothing happened. A very boring week of football, all capped off by the most inhumane form of audience torture, Russell Wilson on prime time. Well, going into week 4, things literally could not have started off on a worse note, as Thursday Night Football had been churning out pure horse all year long. And this week they gave us the Bengals vs. Dolphins, a game in which Tua's horrible injury changed concussion protocol forever. But the scriptwriters tried to do everything in their power to distract us from what had happened, as we got to see a London fiasco between the Vikings and the scrub Saints team. Basically, after Justin Jefferson almost single-handedly drained New Orleans for 4 quarters, the Saints miraculously got into great position to hit a 60-yard game-tying field goal. Then, the rarest way to lose a game reared its ugly head with the double doink. Cody Parkey somewhere feels a disturbance in the force, and the Saints lose the game. And just like that, the season got right back on its unstable pathway, as we got to see the Lions and Seahawks explode for 93 combined points. The Ravens' collapses only begin as they oddly decided to go for it on 4th down rather than tying the game with a field goal, failing to score, then letting the Bills score a touchdown, locking themselves out of the game. A Marcus Peters fight with his coach later, and the Ravens lost. Then the Chiefs and Niners both had statement wins over the decaying Bucks and Rams, and the Packers had a wild duel with Bailey Zappi, at the time the 3rd backup on the Patriots roster. Remember, Brian Hoyer actually started this game, and then got instantly masticated. Then Bailey Zappi came in and battled Aaron Rodgers punch for punch. After supposedly putting the Patriots in the driver's seat, Aaron Rodgers, armed with Romeo Dobbs and, I don't know, some guys who claim they can catch a football, drove down the field, then wheeled Mason Crosby's fossilized remains onto the field to kick a game winner. Spoiler alert, both of these teams aren't very good. Then in week 5, man, there is nothing like starting the week off with some Denver Broncos football. If I haven't said it already, it turns out Russell Wilson must have been spending the offseason at Burger King, cause this man can't cook for shit. Then we moved on to Sunday, where at this point in the year, the Giants were confusing the hell out of everyone because they now had a 4-1 record after beating the Packers this week, despite, you know, being bad outside of like 1/5 of the defense and Saquon Barkley. We also saw the Chargers dial up the worst 4th down attempt this year, luckily relying on one of the only certainties in life, with the Browns doing Browns things. And with the Browns throwing a game, of course their despair buddy the Raiders had to do everything they could to one-up their mediocrity. Now for the Raiders, after blowing a double-digit lead in a single quarter, they decided to abandon analytics and logic itself by going for and failing a 2-point conversion, then finally pulling the noose on their own chances by having their 2 receivers slam into each other in a loss. And then after the game, Davante Adams tosses this poor man into the ground and gets filed for a crime. Classic Raiders, am I right? But besides that, this week really had a ton of blowouts. Like, a ton of blowouts. Now, in week 6, things started to get more interesting, as the Giants got another statement win benefiting from yet another horrible Ravens collapse as they turned the ball over multiple times in the final minutes of the game to impressively find a way to lose the game. Also, the other New York team was doing pretty well themselves. The Jets have found themselves at 4-2, coming off of a win in Lambeau, with Queso Gardner snatching a cheese hat and, you know, just being way too good for a player this early on in their career. Other than that, teams like the Bucks and Cardinals hit rock bottom after truly devastating losses to teams supposed to be nowhere near their projected talent. We also got the best chess match of the entire year so far with Bills vs. Chiefs, and no disrespect to the Eagles, but these are 2 of the best, most battle-tested teams in the league. And obviously a game between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, Sean McDermott and Andy Reid was going to be a masterpiece, and that's exactly what we got. Late in the game, Josh Allen threw a touchdown to Dawson Knox and sat on the bench preparing to get his heart ripped out of his chest again and again and again by Patrick Mahomes. But that didn't happen. Instead, Patrick Mahomes made a mistake. I didn't think the scriptwriters wrote that into his algorithm. Now, at this point in week 7, the fat had been cut from all the teams, and there was nowhere to hide. We now knew who the good teams were and who the bad ones are. So after trading Christian McCaffrey and putting the whole team on the market, the Carolina Panthers steamrolled the Buccaneers. easily. And so many of these games happened this week, as Geno Smith's revenge tour kept going. As led by a lethal offense, the Seahawks beat the living hell out of the Chargers. And the Commanders beat the Packers. Like I said though, we now know teams like the Packers and Bucks aren't what they once were, and teams like the Chiefs and Titans, who consistently just find a way to win games, do not get the credit that they deserve. So now that we know who's good and who's bad, we move on to week 8, and just when you thought the NFL was calming down just by a crumb, the scriptwriters once again got kidnapped and were held at gunpoint to write an entertaining week of this ball sport. And for as inhumane as it may be, they delivered, as we got Dolphins vs. Lions, an absolute track meet that was super entertaining to watch. And if it wasn't already somehow not clear, Mike McDaniels is a football genius, and the Dolphins have an offense better than any in the NFL. We also saw the Eagles and Cowboys prove their contenders as well, and in addition to the Giants, it looks like the NFC East will easily be the most competitive division in the league. Also, very quietly, the Vikings beat the Cardinals to move to 6-1, their only loss being to the undefeated Eagles in, prime time. But the only game this year to hold a candlelight to the Steelers vs. Bengals all the way back in week 1 is this week 8 game between the Falcons and the Panthers. The thing with this game is that it was kind of boring for most of the first half, until the Falcons reeled off a breakaway touchdown to give them a probable win. But if you're familiar with the Buddha's teachings, you'll probably know that Falcons fans' blood pressure is legally not allowed to go under a certain amount. So PJ Walker throws a dime that would make prime Aaron Rodgers blush, and DJ Moore repents for his past sins, scoring a game-winning Hail Mary. But that wasn't the end, and then after a crazy sequence where the extra point was missed off a penalty and then an interception by Carolina, which set up another missed field goal happened, and then Atlanta finally got the ball back and was able to get into Young Oku range, who ended the game on the spot. I don't know what else to say, other than you had to be there watching the game live. It was unexplainable. Besides that, the big thing from this week was seeing Christian McCaffrey on the 49ers, and the single boulder that fell before the avalanche that was the trade deadline. Calvin Ridley got pre-ordered by the Jaguars, Bradley Chubb got shipped off to Miami to further make the Finns even scarier, Hawkinson should help the Vikings passing and rushing attack, as well as so many more. And then in week 9, the halfway point in the season, the scriptwriters were on something, cause this week just made no sense at all. The Packers continued to dig their own grave as they lost to the Lions. The Bills, who were previously untouchable, fell to Zach Wilson and the Jets, and the Raiders blew a 17-point lead to the Jaguars. Oh, wait, no, they were supposed to do that. In week 9, teams like the Dolphins and Bengals showed that their offenses are still insanely powerful and dangerous, as well as the Seahawks, who continue to be up there with the best offenses in the league. The two former Super Bowl teams duked it out in a battle of suck, and Tom Brady was finally able to rekindle some of that magic he had back in 1962. Regardless, this week was still unpredictable on every single level, and I cannot wait to see what the coming weeks and playoffs have in store. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, then subscribe, because I got a lot of videos on the channel just like this one, and you should probably watch this video right here on every NFL team's best moment. It's pretty good, trust me. Anyways, until next time.